This video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel. And be honest, when you woke up this morning, did you grab your phone and go to check the Bitcoin price? And did you pause just for a brief moment and think to yourself, oh man, I hope it doesn't start with a 7? Because I know I did. But that's good. That is really good because that is exactly the kind of thing we want to see into a weekly cycle low. I'll be honest, until kind of last night, I was missing one component here. And that is, I said this before with Bitcoin. Back at this prior weekly cycle low, I really didn't feel comfortable buying it. And I remember talking about this over and over again. And I said to the members, I was like, look, I've got to buy this. I have to, but it doesn't feel good. And I'm operating with zero tolerance policy. I can't have it fail. And we're going to have to really start to put downside scenarios on the table and entertain the whole cycle is broken and all of this if this cycle doesn't hold. And it felt really gross, frankly, to long this cycle low down here. And up until last night, as I was saying, that was like the one component that I was missing here. It didn't really feel uncomfortable to be thinking about getting long all the while we were kind of trading above 90k. But couple of candles later, and now we're hitting lows of 80. Was that an 81k wick? Is that what I can see here? I haven't really been paying too much attention, if I'm honest, but yeah, about 82k. So by the time we start to see this kind of downside decline, now we're starting to get to that point where I can really see sentiment turning. I can see people online getting upset. I can see that myself doesn't feel super great about buying this, even though we're going to do what we always do, which is stick to the strategy and trade the system, which normally works out pretty well for us. So I'm pleased to say that we've finally gotten to the point where it feels a bit uncomfortable to long. That's what we want to see out of a cycle low, especially a larger order degree cycle like the weekly cycle. Also notice, as I was talking about in yesterday's video, but it hadn't happened at the time, it's extremely common into these major weekly cycle lows to get things like trendline breakdowns. Okay, and I appreciate this chart's a little bit dirty, but if I take all this stuff off and clean it up a little bit, you can see, okay, we've got a trend line that touches these wicks here, and so far, breakdown retest, okay? So this is exactly, again, what I was talking about in yesterday's video. It's normal and to be expected to get these kind of fake bear trap breakdowns in here, maybe even one final push to the downside, just to get the shorts to really pile in and the bears to say, well, can't argue with that, breakdown, retest, resumption, and then, of course, we can set the trap to swing this thing back up to the upside and prove that this was a fake breakdown. So because of where we are in the cycle, we know we can't trust this breakdown, which is happy days, and thus there is still no changes to the plan. We're still looking for that weekly cycle low to yield a double. We have made it all the way from here to here now, so any moment now, and we should get a confirmed swing and a reversal. I can see some people still don't really get it, even though we've been talking about it every day. I can see some people say, yeah, well, this guy's been calling for a cycle low every day for 2 weeks. But yeah, for those of us that know, we know, okay, and all we're waiting for is that swing and a confirmation, and then it is time to get long. Bob is also pointing out something very interesting as of yesterday. If you've been following along with this idea, then you know we're expecting that weekly cycle low, roughly speaking, a double, and then perhaps one more time thereafter, if we're lucky. But we're also talking about taking profit somewhere in this neighborhood, taking some off the table since we will be extremely late in the larger order degree 4-year cycle. Bob has really just confirmed this as of yesterday. He was saying, unless you believe this Bitcoin cycle was truly topped for the 4-year cycle, all we have here is a lower range oscillation of the shorter duration cycle. So this blue cycle here would represent the major 4-year cycle, and this yellow dotted one would represent the weekly cycles, okay, that peak and trough on their way through the larger order degree 4-year cycle. I said, hi Bob, look, my best guess is we're at 1 or 2 on this, okay, 1 or 2. Where do you think we are? And he said definitely 2, okay, 6 on time. So there's my 2, 6 on time, if it mirrors prior cycles, which again kind of speaks to being here before that final hurrah, with potentially one final squeeze to the upside thereafter. So there we would have potentially here at 2 or 6 time, okay, looking for one final hurrah. But interestingly enough, this diagram shows a lower high here, okay? But as Bob points out down here, he thinks the peak time will be at about 8, which is here, okay, except not as depicted. He thinks it will be a higher high. He just generated this with ChatGPT. So Bob is actually looking potentially for us to be here to see something like this, followed by one final higher high, and then we can roll over and die into that 4-year cycle low. And of course, if this is to play out, it would fit with this idea, okay, that we've done all of this, we're now here, looking for a double, then we get potentially one final decline, one final hurrah, and then that is all she wrote. So pretty interesting times. Bob confirming that this is essentially what we've got in play, which I like to see. And I also wanted to pull up this PDF that I wrote about cycles and point at something, because what we've got from Bitcoin at the moment is very, very textbook. Notice that we've got the weekly cycle low here and the weekly cycle low here, and we go 1 right translated, 2 right translated, 3 right translated, and then the 4th one is expected to left translate. When we hop over to Bitcoin, what have we got right here? 1 right translation, 2 right trans, 3 right trans, and now the 4th left translated and failed into that weekly cycle low. So I know a lot of people are getting bearish here, okay? But this is textbook. This is absolutely textbook. This is exactly what we've done here. So it's hard for me to make the case that anything here is outside of the ordinary. It seems to me like cycles are doing cycle things, cycles are in control, and all we got to do now is find that swing, okay? Any day now, this thing should show us a big green candle, and I will personally have no problem hopping on board that, getting long. I noticed some people were talking about MicroStrategy, putting in a 5% update yesterday. I mean, this chart is pretty wrecked, but again, it should be about time to see a reversal come in. Now, I'm still in the camp of people that thinks that was the top, okay? I'm not going to bother harping on this because we've done it to death, but the weekly cycle should be bottoming, so should the daily cycle. We should be about to see some kind of confirmation, a breakout, and then there probably is some upside on the table. Now, I still think that upside is going to be capped, okay, open to being proven wrong. If you're a bull, if you think we make a new high, then of course you can long the weekly cycle low and expect a new high. But it'll be interesting to see now if we can start to watch this downside move in Bitcoin lose momentum, lose power. So if we start to see MicroStrategy diverge and start to break out whilst Bitcoin is kind of chopping around sideways perhaps, or doing something like this, then I think we can start to point at that and say, okay, get ready for that bottom to come in. If we zoom in and take a good close look at Bitcoin here, if this thing starts to lose power to the downside, if today's candle closes green and then maybe tomorrow's pushes up, or it takes another 2 days to start to push up, we can look at this and say, okay, it's losing power to the downside. Of course, the inverse is true. If this thing is going to morph into a big red candle today, then we can't really look at this and say it's losing momentum. But as it stands, okay, it looks like we started big, bit smaller, kind of big, but wicked back up. If we can start to put in a sideways or a bottom here, perhaps even a swing, then we can look at this and say this is losing power. It wants to turn right in that timing window for a perfect cycle low. And again, we might be able to look at things like MicroStrategy. If they start to diverge and push up now and start to lead the breakout, then we might be able to say, okay, we can have increased confidence that the bottom is close for Bitcoin. Again, as I said, from a fractalization perspective, nothing is out of the ordinary for Bitcoin. Also, from a larger order degree cycle perspective, nothing is out of order for Bitcoin. And from a base case hypothesis of weekly cycle low and double, I see no reason to doubt it as of this moment in time. So what about altcoins? Well, apparently 50% of people think there's still hope, which frankly shows an unrelenting conviction in the altcoin holders. But it may well be the end of an era here. This is the number of coins bonding down to almost zero. Just about 6 weeks ago, we were up in the over 1,000 per day neighborhood. Okay, we get the Trump top come in. That makes a lot of sense. And since then, no one really cares about meme coins anymore. I have been very consistent in saying if we're going to see some altcoin action, I don't think it's going to be here. I think this is going to be the Bitcoin show, and even dominance, perhaps even to 70%. And then I think once we get that trend line breakdown, once we get the top for the weekly cycle in about 6 or 7 weeks time, then I think we can entertain perhaps some rotation in here. We'll see if it's right. I still maintain breadth will be thin. I still maintain we're going to look back here and see less than 20 coins have actually done very, very significant numbers. But we'll see how it goes. I still maintain, though, that in here is all going to be the Bitcoin and crypto stocks show. So we'll see about that. And I wanted to point out a couple more things here. This is the weather report from the weatherman. First of all, take a look at this liquidation heat map. We have essentially cleared all of the downside liquidations. Okay, so that's really good. And notice every man and his dog now is calling, I've lost my chart. Every man and his dog now is calling for a back test all the way down here between 65 and 75, say. So are we going to get that now that everyone's aiming for it? Or are we just going to get a fake breakdown, trap a few shorts, and then rocket to the upside? I, of course, still think the latter. Time will tell about that. If we are going to move down a lot lower, we really need to get a move on and do it immediately. We really need to do it over the weekend. Otherwise, we're going to be very late in the cycle. So again, encouraging, right? The later we go, the more confidence we can have in the turn. Socrates also showing here that so far, this pullback right into this parabolic curve. Okay, so presented without words, don't really need to say anything on that. Let's see if it holds. And remember, even if it does get a little bit of a breakdown here, okay, normal and to be expected to see some traps into that weekly cycle low. FOMO Finder is back to balanced. And if we scroll down and take a look at this, it looks almost exactly how I wanted it to look, if I'm completely honest. I was talking about getting it to look a little bit like this with a flash of purple. I don't know if we're necessarily going to get that or not. We'll see how this thing plays out. Okay, we're just missing that purple component. It's the only thing I really wanted to see and we haven't quite got yet. So I don't really know if there's time to get some purple on here. I do think that looks complete just to my eyeball. That looks exactly how I was kind of expecting it to look in terms of price action. I just was hoping that we could maybe get a little bit of purple come in here, and then hopefully what we can get now is a big rip to the upside in line with everything I've shown you so far. So it's looking pretty good to me. Like I said, deep down inside, I was half expecting to wake up this morning and pull my phone out and have a look at the Bitcoin price, only to see it on a 70-something handle. I'm pleased to say we didn't quite get there yet. But wholly speaking, unless you think the top is in, okay, and unless you don't know about cycles, I think it's kind of hard not to be somewhat optimistic here. And remember that after this weekly cycle low, even in the bear case, we normally would get at least one right translated daily cycle, and then we can start to break down and fail into the next weekly cycle. In fact, since I got my PDF here, let me pull this up and show you. So this is the bullish cycle, 3 right translations and a left translation to give us the weekly cycle. And in a bearish cycle, as per this diagram here that I drew, you can see 1 right translation, okay, then typically we go left translated daily cycle and fail, left and fail, left and fail, and that gives us the weekly cycle. So even if this weekly cycle is bearish, and even if this weekly cycle is going to fail, we would still expect at least 1 daily cycle of upside here to be right translated, which for Bitcoin is a couple of months, remember. It's a 60-day cycle from here to here. So we'd expect at least 2 months of right translated upside from Bitcoin, and then we can look for the next cycle to be left translated and start to fail if the bear case is on the table. So again, you know, since we're already here, we'll be looking for at least 1 60-day right translated daily cycle low. Then we can talk about seeing left translations and fails, and then we can start to really say, now we've got a problem, now it's time to exit the market, now it's time for Camel to take his profit elsewhere and leave this space until the next 4-year cycle low. But you can see, I can't really be too concerned in the short to medium term. We've got a good couple of months here to let the market do what the market's going to do first. My Camel cycle indicator has picked a daily cycle for the dollar. So we'll see if this can confirm by breaking out. If it can, then it will leave this here. And I also think it's going to grab this weekly cycle, which is probably unconfirmed, and stick it there. That's what I think will happen if we can get some upside. And then, of course, when we zoom out, we'll be able to say, this thing looks an awful lot like a textbook example of the cycle. It looks an awful lot like we're getting ready to see this big push. And again, even though we've come down and undercut my yellow squiggle, if this is a real weekly cycle, again, we're probably going to get at least 1 right translated daily cycle, even in the bearish case. And in the bullish case, you know, we're going to be continuing to track this yellow squiggle. So pretty wild times. Also notice in here, 1 right trans, 2 right trans, 3 right trans, 4th left translation and fail. So maybe now you can see where the whole idea for Bitcoin's left translated cycle came from, since this is what Bitcoin's cycle had shown us. 1 right translation, 2 right translation, 3 right translation, and therefore I was hypothesizing this 4th one would left translate and fail. Since it has not, then guess what we get to do next cycle? That's right, I'm prepping you again. Next cycle we get to say on a balance of probabilities, we will see that left translation come in. Why? Because according to cycle theory, if we do not get left translation in cycle 4 to reset, we would see it therefore in cycle 5. So are you ready? Are you ready to see this weekly cycle low push up one final time? Are you ready to see that print something akin to this, okay, followed by a 12-month bear market? And then are you ready for cycle 5 with an even higher probability than cycle 4 had to see that left translation and extended bear market decline come in? There's always an outside chance Bitcoin is going to be the first thing I've ever seen that just completely disrespects cycle theory in this way. I wonder if what we're going to get instead is a right translated cycle for Bitcoin, and we'll be able to point at this thing and say, well, Bitcoin is its own unique beast. It wouldn't really surprise me if anything is going to be able to be its own unique beast, it's Bitcoin. But on a balance of probabilities, okay, it was highly probable we'd see a left translation this cycle. We didn't, so that means it's even more likely next cycle is going to do one of these left translations. For now, though, in the short term, let's look to see if we can indeed confirm this daily cycle low for the dollar. Let's look to see if the same can be said for Bitcoin. Gold is well on its way to a daily cycle low, happy days there. And the stock market as well looks to be firing some warning signs, doesn't it? Okay, it has, I believe, started its decline into a daily cycle low here. I think we're going to get 2 drives probably into the cycle low and go, possibly even with a fake trend line breakdown. Also, I didn't mention it for gold, but I would imagine that's what's going to happen here. My preferred look for the gold market here is we get a counter trend bounce, 2 drives into that daily cycle low, and then we can draw a trend line off of here and again confirm it and add and move stops up from the initial trades, all of that kind of stuff. So going to be handling gold and the stock market the same way. I'm looking for Bitcoin to be leading here, leading the upside in the coming days. And of course, as always, we'll probably find some kind of narrative to append and explain away the upside. So probably something is going to show up in the news in the next few sessions that has everyone pointing at it and going, wow, white swan, we couldn't have seen this coming. Here come the bull market. Here comes the resumption of alt season. Who knows what it's going to be? But the cycles are telling us that news is around the corner, that a catalyst is around the corner. And once more, everyone apart from the people with cycles will be looking at this going, how could anyone have seen this coming? We're going to keep doing us. We're going to keep doing the cycles. I hope you're having a great week like I am. I hope you're doing well in life. And until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see. Rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame. Sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel Finance got the markets key, taking a stormy